Hello everyone, my name is Avalon and welcome back for another analysis. This time we're going to be going through a level called Small Troll 1 by SP25, also known as SuperPlex25. The level code will be both on your screen and in the description at the moment, but for now, let's get into it. Okay, so firstly with the starting room, you have a off-screen thwomp immediately coming down and killing the player, and this is just horrendously bad level design and really unfair on the player. If you wish to keep this in the level, then consider using something like a muncher on tracks that the player sees and has time to react to. Secondly, you have the spring bouncing down onto the thwomp and pushing it into this little area here. Now that is fantastic because either the player will dodge to the left and then get hit by the thwomp, or they'll dodge all the way to the left and get trapped in there by the thwomp. So that part of it is really good. It's just the fact that it's an off-screen thwomp and there's no chance to react is just really unfair on the player. Next you have this section here, and there's an unnecessary P timer, which is just a long wait for the player at the start of the level for no real good reason, but eventually this piranha plant will fall down. And I just think that if you are going to make the player wait, you need to make the timer on this piranha plant a little bit sharper so that it punishes the player for not being on the pipe when the P switch ends. Otherwise it's just pointless because the time it takes this piranha plant to spawn is just silly. Obviously there is a use to the piranha plant later in the level, and I can understand why the time is there, but there's a simple way to avoid that being a problem, but I will get to that when we come back round to this room. The final part to look at in this room is down here, which looks like there may be a reason to visit because you've got time with the P-switch timer, and there's a note block here which could contain anything. Of course it contains a lava bubble which will prevent the player from surviving if they're burnt, and also this 1-up block here with a mushroom. That will obviously prevent the player getting back out of this area, and the 1-up will just add a little bit of troll. There's a note pipe hidden underneath the blue platform, and I hope that when this level's finished it goes somewhere, and then a fishy to stop the player surviving their return into that room. Of course, if they do happen to have the mushroom, they can use the fireball to die, so it's not a soft lock, it's a good death point. Now, assuming the player gets through to here, you've got this really cool setup to get the player out of the way of the pipe, which I really like. It's really clever, and it also hides this door from them. And we will go through that door before we proceed through the rest of the level, but in order to do that, you first have to die and then hold up as you come through the pipe. But the one good thing is because you put the spike up here, it makes the player think that the door was the right way to go, and that killing themselves is a smart option, so it's a good place spike. On entering the door room, you will find this sort of setup here. Jumping on the note blocks, of course, will put you in the lava, and the correct answer is to time your jumps well to get through these gaps, which I can't do, to get a pointless key. Now the general setup of this room is really clever. With the key being boxed off over to the right there, it looks like you desperately need it to progress with the level, and that's really clever. And there's also a setup above here that makes it suggest that something else is going to happen in this room. All in all, a really well designed troll death room. So, assuming you don't make your way through that door, and you find yourself in this room, there is also the well-marked note block. Now that is one thing that you've done really well as a creator, is you've marked your blocks, and every creator should be marking anything in their level to effectively communicate with the player. And what this does is begins a series of events, the first of which will obviously block this off, and now the player realizes they could have gone through that pipe over there. Luckily this bomb arrives because the player gets further blocked off by this muncher, but the bomb reveals the way forward. Now, I would reduce the timer on the muncher so it looks like they don't just have to wait out the P-switch, or increase the timer on the bomb so they feel a little bit stuck over here, but then as you have already, give the player no way to die on this side of the room. That way it may indicate to the player there's more to come, and if they do kill themselves, it'll be on this muncher and by their own choice. If you make your way over the top of this section that the bomb kindly opened for you, you can proceed on the level through the pipe. Now this is where I feel the level's a little bit harsh. That spring is very difficult to dodge, and providing the P-switch is ended, this conveyor up here will running the muncher into a bomb, which will trigger that on-off switch there, and reveal the door. I really like this reveal. I think it's really clever. excluding the spring. I think the spring is too harsh and too hard for the player to dodge. However, if the player does get into this section, they will find themselves with a beautiful stiletto and a bunch of random stuff going on around them, but there is nowhere that you can take the stiletto. You can get up here to this spring, but there's nothing above it, and there's no value to being up here. The only route to take with the stiletto is straight down. Now, I stopped my pound there, and I'll show you why that matters in a second. But the key thing you need to know is this question mark block here just contains a way to trap the player in with a muncher, which is really good because it means that there's no way to not die in this section. But all of below this blue platform, which could have fallen at any moment, are blocks, which will then cause the blue platforms to drop and the player die in the poison. If you avoid the spring, you can then proceed through the doorway that opens up and onwards with the level. Now you get this donut block here, which is really good, with another spring that takes you to the side. It's really easy to dodge, and the flag is right there. So that's quite a good setup, because if the player does get trolled, it's on their own failures and on the level creator's merit. And obviously, once you know it's there, it's easy to avoid because you can just jump over it, jump to the right, do whatever, because you know the flag's there. However, if you do get bonked by the spring and come to the left, you will find yourself in this section here, a nice little on-off switch and this conveyor belt preventing you getting the speed required to jump up. Once you hit the on-off switch, you can return through the door to the start of the level. You can see there the piranha plant moving, and it means that by the time you get down here, the piranha plant will block the pipe. Luckily, with invincibility frames, you can proceed and start the level again. Because the on-off switches are now the other way around, everything happens a little bit faster, but it doesn't change the fact that this spring here is just way too harsh on the player, and that is probably the biggest downfall of the level. However, assuming you don't get hit by the multitude of springs, it's an easy finish and an easy clear. So that's that. Quite a short level and obviously a work in progress. There are some sections of that level that are beyond brilliant and really need to be highlighted as examples of what the player should be doing, or what creators should be doing in their levels themselves. The setup, for example, as you leave the pipe, firstly a cannon pushes you across, some blocks push you up, and then the cannon blocks the door, is a really good little setup, and it looks nice and it's mechanically pleasing to watch. And a lot of your mechanics for those sort of things were kept off screen, which is a really good use of the poison and a really good setup in general. That being said, the spring section of the level, where you go through the pipe and the door is revealed by the cannon moving, is really challenging for the player, in that once you know the troll is there, it's so hard to not get hit by that spring. It is probably one of the more challenging sections of the level, and as the creator you probably know to jump on the right block to just give yourself that little over on the spring, especially if you duck jump. But when you have a new player, it's going to take them a while to work out how to get over that spring, and that's not because they're being got by the troll, it's just because they're being got by a technically challenging level. And that takes away a lot of the fun that comes in troll levels. Finally, you have the off-screen thwomp at the beginning of the level, and that is just unacceptable level design. It's not fair on the player. There's no way for the player to react, and it is purely your level killing the player, not the player killing themselves. A great example of the player killing themselves in your level would be if they miss the door after the first pipe and then they choose to jump into the spikes, and that is the sort of good trolling you want, is where the player thinks they know what they've done, so they kill themselves or try again, only to realize that that's not the way. I would suggest that as you grow this level and as you develop and add to it, that you firstly get rid of the off-screen thwomp, and that you remove the spring that falls down after that pipe. Keep the one-way there, because the player will go forward anyway, but make the pipe block the other way, so the player has to go into that section with the P-switch active. It will just make that cannon stay in its place a little bit longer, and give the player a little bit more time to move to the right and then get trapped. Sadly, in its current state, I can't give this level a heart. I didn't think it was... I thought that the off-screen thwomp was just so bad that the rest of the level was irrelevant, to be honest. And especially when you're someone like myself who's going through these levels and giving feedback, taking notes. That one became really annoying, especially with the P-switch wait that you have to go through in that first section as well. But yeah, luckily a shorter level for the whole part, and I look forward to seeing how it develops into a bigger level. And SuperPlex, I'd love for you to comment your update codes in the comment section. I'll pin them and make sure they're highlighted, so that any players that do want to see how this level grows can simply log in and get your level codes. However, for now, I've been Avalon, and all that's left to do is secure the world record on this course.